Yeah.
man. What's up, Brenden? How you feeling, bro? How have the last 2 days covering the Sacramento Kings been for you?
I mean, an experience, that's for sure. I was a Celtics guy before, so I definitely got some crap for that one. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm just first year actually asking the guys questions, and I'm at a point where I'm like, man, what are we supposed to ask right now? And
Mm.
it's nothing about the game. It's a lot of psychological stuff, I guess. Like, yeah, so it's, I guess, a learning experience for me. That's the only way I can twist this in a positive light for myself. So,
What did you make of Alvin Gentry last night? Like kind of going on a little bit of a diatribe talking about I'm not quitting, we're not quitting, all this other stuff. And bless Alvin's heart. But I know I was sitting there like, come on, man. I know you're not quitting, but
before you answer that, Brenden, here is exactly what Alvin Gentry had to say last night.
All right, guys. Thank you. I appreciate it. We ain't going to give up. I can tell you, we will not quit. As I said to the guys, I've never quit at anything in my life, and this is not going to be the first thing. Okay. So we're going to keep battling and find a way to get around this. Okay. I guess I shouldn't say that, but that's a bad word. But we're going to find a way to get through it. Okay.
Isn't that like the second time he's done that?
oh, at least, at least. There was a moment earlier in the year, feels like at least 20, 15 games ago at this point, where I forget exactly what game it was. This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my 35 years. I promise we're going to fix it. That's at least the third, fourth time we've heard that. And there's been at least two moments since the worst thing he's seen in 35 years that probably topped that moment.
yeah.
So I get why someone might like roll their eyes at it, but I don't know what else Alvin is supposed to say. I don't know that you want your coach going out there and calling out specific guys by name or things like this. Like maybe but I don't think so. It doesn't strike me as Alvin's that type of guy. Like every single time he's, I'm sure that behind the scenes he's thinking that player X, Y, or Z isn't doing what I'm asking him to do. He's talking about pace all the time, and that's not happening. That's on the players. He's acknowledged that. But Alvin is the guy that he says he's always going to self-reflect first and focus on what he can do. And I think there's an aspect if every single player was doing that, maybe this would look different. So I get why it's a little much. We've heard the same thing. I just don't know what else Alvin is supposed to say. And I don't know. I kind of like a guy that's going to, what can I do rather than throwing the blame on somebody else.
So as we continue this convo, Brenden, if you could turn your mic up a little bit or scoot a little closer to your mic, one or the other, man, that'll work for us. We're having a first quarter performance from the Boston Celtics game with your microphone right now. So I think that's what's happening.
9 points right
now. We got a different look at Davion Mitchell last night. How do you feel about Davion's, obviously with De'Aaron out, Terrence out also. How do you feel about how Davion has looked so far this season?
Yeah, hopefully that mic's a little bit better for you guys there. I think that Davion, when you're looking at him as a guy that's a older rookie, he's 23 years old already, I've been kind of disappointed. I mean, I didn't have great expectations for him coming into the year, but I think the big question, like we knew what he was going to be on defense, right? But at least maybe some people had a little bit more they were expecting from him defensively. But I thought as a guy that's 6 foot, 6'1", like you're not going to be a crazy difference maker at that size. So you better bring something on the offensive end as well. And you saw that his last year at Baylor, there was some progress there on the offensive end that I think a lot of people were clinging on to as a potential growth for him. And it's kind of looking like that last season of shooting that he was 44% from three is a little bit of the outlier. Like year before was 32, freshman year at Auburn before he transferred was 28. And the consistency throughout college was his free throw percentage being underwhelming. 67% year one, that first year at Baylor, year three, 66%, 64% when he won the national championship before he got drafted. I think he is what is expected on defense, but I don't think that's as impactful as some people maybe hyped it up to be just because of some of his physical limitations. And then offensively,
or because of the rest of the team is so bad.
It's true. And I don't mean to come off as this is Davion's fault or anything like that. Like you never know, in better circumstances, he could look a lot different. And I think some of his space creation has been encouraging. But I guess I'm just starting to be like, man, I hope he at some point, because I asked him, like, what do you make of your 3-point shooting? Does it start to get to you mentally when guys are not really bothering to guard you that much from there? And he's like, this happened at college too. And at some point they just started going down and that kept up. So hopefully we reach that at some point. But I'm just starting to get a little bit concerned, like, man, was that senior year at Baylor an outlier when it comes to shooting?
How much do you contribute the fact that he doesn't seem to have a consistent role from night in and night out to his inconsistent play?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a part of it, right? I think that most guys on this team are struggling, and that's probably why it's so hard to evaluate anybody. Like, every single player on this team is going to have an asterisk because of ridiculous circumstances. Like, I also don't think that Davion has dealt with this sort of losing in his life, which I think is typical for any rookie to come into like a lesser franchise. I mean, the heart of this team for a guy that is so defined by that is probably difficult to deal with. So I think for sure that's got to be a factor. I'm definitely not sitting here saying that Davion's going to be a poor NBA player or anything like that. It's just, he's been underwhelming as well. I don't feel like it's kind of been talked about of like, this was the guy that was touted as best player available at 9. And there were obvious fit concerns. So you went after him because you thought he was the best player available. I think he's just underwhelmed a little bit. But again, there is an asterisk that I think is like very real and understandable and deserve to be placed on that because this season is such a crap show.
And you mentioned you're not putting the blame for this season on Davion Mitchell, and it's difficult to put the blame for this season on one person, but it's the mystery we've all been trying to solve. Like, even if you didn't think this team was going to be good, I don't think many people thought this team was going to be this. How did we get here where we're staring? I mean, we got Philadelphia Saturday, by the way. I got Joel going for 60 in that one. We've got the Knicks coming up in here. I think that's Monday. Then they come home. Oh, good. They're back at the Golden One Center. Well, they'll play the Brooklyn Nets, and then they'll hop on the 20-minute flight to San Francisco and take on the Warriors. That's all coming up here within the next handful of days. How did we get to this point where I think most fans look at it this like it's over? Like the season's over.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this just eats away at you a little bit. Like, it's hard to point at anybody. Like, from the beginning of the year, they had those first, I want to say, 10 games where they were actually healthy. They didn't get affected by, the Omicron outbreak hadn't gone through the NBA quite yet at that point. They were still working with Luke, and there was all this idea going into the year that there was going to be some consistency, some continuity, right? And they actually had that for a little while, and when Luke was let go, that stretch was referenced a lot by Monty of we've seen this team play better, talking about when they started 5-4 against some really tough opponents, and then I think it just slowly starts to kind of eat at you, and especially in this last stretch, man, like it's hard to really define. Like, Rashawn Holmes is a guy that's known for his heart and hustle, and that's not been there, and I've obviously him bringing it, maybe that sort of leaks into some of these other guys as well. It does kind of feel like a lack of leadership, or I heard you guys say like accountability. I think that is fitting. Like, you don't see that. And I don't think that means that some of these guys can't be held accountable. I think there's some of those. And like, if you're trying to figure out how to fix it, I think it's figuring out the guys that are hurting when it comes to that aspect. Because there's plenty of guys that I think will follow suit if they're asked to be held accountable. So I think there's a couple that are, I don't feel comfortable from the outside laying out certain names, but I think we all got at least 2 in mind when I'm talking about this. So I think it's about people from the inside.
We're comfortable. It's Buddy and Marvin. You're talking about Buddy and Marvin. Like, come on, man. Like, take your kids' gloves off. We're talking about Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley.
You're right.
We all know. Look, we know. Come on. We know.
Yeah, that's what it looks like, right? And I think from the inside especially, you're able to identify that. Like, these are the guys that, and maybe there's more that it's harder to tell from the outside that are hurting the culture, because I still think there's plenty of guys that can be a part of a good culture, but you got to remove the ones that are hurting it And then you do have to implement one person that's going to be a leadership voice or a head of accountability. And maybe like Tyrese or Davion can become that as they get more fed up with this, maybe. But to me, it's like there's nobody to do that. And there's people that are probably just making it a little bit worse.
Would you, in any potential trade that may be coming up, hopefully that's coming up, to get a guy like Simmons or Sabonis or anything like that, would you include this year's first round pick?
I mean, it's just got to have protections, right? And it depends what sort of protections you're talking about. Like, at very least, I'm doing top 4. Yeah, I guess. Like, you probably have to, right?
That's like the story of the king, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess, man.
Yeah, I mean, major protections, but I don't
probably
know.
wouldn't.
I don't know
Probably
if there's anybody out there that has been rumored to be available that I would do that for.
Yeah, I don't know that I would either, because if you're going to be this team that we've seen, which it would take a major shakeup for them not to be, adding one more guy, I think it's underrated. Like, you add one more guy the same caliber as Fox or Tyrese with the top 4 pick, which sadly they're not that far from having decent chances of doing, then your trajectory can change pretty quick. Like, you look at Cleveland, like Mobley is doing a whole lot for that team just by adding that one piece. I think there is a lot of circumstances. Toronto too. They take 1 year where they accept, all right, this isn't our year, so we can use it to add another top caliber player and change the trajectory, because that's what they got to figure out what to do right now, is how to change their trajectory, whether that's bringing someone in a trade, in a draft, coaching change. They just got to do something that is going to actually alter the path that they're on right now.
You're listening to D'Lo and KC on ESPN 1320 KIFM West Sacramento, KRXQ HD2 Sacramento, and Odyssey Station, and driven by Lashers, Elk Grove Dodge. We've got Kings tickets coming up an hour from now. We're talking to Brenden Nunes of the Kings Herald and the Kings Pulse podcast. This has certainly been a hot topic of discussion, particularly on social media, here on the show as well, over the course of the last 48 hours or so. Where are you? Are you a let's tank and start over? Are you in between? Like, what do you want to see this team do moving forward?
I mean, at this point, I had spent all year not even considering the chances of, like, oh, they're going to build through the draft or add another draft piece, because I spent all of last year doing that. And I was like, all right, maybe I know enough at this point that is not going to happen. The organization is not going to allow that. At some point, you have to look around and be like, we're already in that spot. You know, we don't even have to make that many changes. Like, you clearly can lose and keep Fox and Halliburton on the team. I know James talked about it yesterday. You do have to worry about it breaking those guys' spirits and mental. But if you have them in the loop where, hey, look, we are trying to add one more guy. Like, I look at what last year was, when I thought they should have shipped off. You know, James reported the other day that the Boston offer was their first round pick and one of Neesmith, Langford, Pritchard. I do not care about those next 3 dudes. And that was for Harrison Barnes. I don't care about those next 3 dudes. The idea was that you are willing to optimize your draft pick by, you get a little bit worse. Toronto lost, I want to say 1 or 2 more games, and they end up with Scotty Barnes. Like, if you are in a position where you're adding a top 5 talent to Fox and Halliburton, because I think you can keep those guys and still be a top 5 draft pick, and you're adding another all-star caliber player, at least when it comes to potential, to that core, I think that's the quickest way to change your trajectory. And I mean, clearly, it wouldn't take that much to get to sort of top 5 pick area.
Would it matter if Fox, they'll just say Fox because he's been here longer? That's the only reason. Said, no, I'm not doing that. Get me out of here. Like, would that matter to you?
I mean, I think that it would make you.
Sorry, when I say would that matter, would that make you say, all right, well, we can't do that because we want to keep Fox? Or would you say, well, no, this is what's best, and Fox, I understand if you don't want to be here, we'll move you, but this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, I think that it would make you have to consider, because I think ideally you add to those guys. But I mean, I don't see why Fox would Fox probably just wants to play with other good players, right? Like clearly the other direction that they've been going in is not working. So I would think that like if Fox is at that point, he's at that point either way. But if that were the case, I think it makes you need to consider it a little bit more. But you know, Tyrese is young. Adding another guy to that and being willing to get a little bit more with that timeline, even though I think De'Aaron fits it as well. It's like if De'Aaron's at that point and you're actually willing to change directions and timelines, then I think the package you get back looks a lot different. If you're able to get some sort of, you know, young and upcoming talent that has potential in a year or two, then yeah, I mean, I think that if you're willing to trade Fox for younger pieces, that it's a whole lot easier to get back a package that is actually fitting what you're trying to do rather than trading a win now player for other win now players, which is where we're at right now and why this whole thing is so complicated.
Yeah. I only ask because I don't think Fox would go for that. If I was Fox, I'd probably I respect what you guys are doing. You want to go that route, please just move me because I'm not, because even if you do that, like
that's what Russ did, right? With Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Okay. I see what's going on here. Like, let's go. And it helped Oklahoma, like Russ wanting to leave helped Oklahoma City as much as it helped Russell Westbrook.
Yep. Absolutely. And because I just think about it where, you know, we go, you know, we think if they just bottom out this year, they'll get a good player. Some people think they'll make a playoff push next year. Like it's probably not the case. Like if they are a bottom 5 team this year and they got a top pick, I think you're looking at least another, I'm not saying forever, but another 2 years before you're back in there. And if I'm De'Aaron Fox, I'm like, I'm not trying to do that another 2 years, possibly. You know,
how's that different from where we're at right now, though? You know what I mean? Like, aren't they kind of already there? Like, if you pitch it as Fox is like, we're trying to get the best possible surrounding cast for you, and we think that we're already in a spot where we're really close to a top 5 pick, and that's what we think is going to be the best to surround you with pieces moving forward. Like, I don't know that they're in all of a different spot already.
If they're coming to Fox, I would tell Fox, no, you trade that first round pick and give me Sabonis. Or if he feels good about Simmons, give me Simmons. That's if they're asking Fox, that's what I would say. If you said this is what we're faced with, like, well, if you go with the 19-year-old, I'm leaving. If you can move that pick and get Sabonis, I'll rock with that. I'll try with that.
Yeah. But how much do you think would also is like direction? Like not just like, okay, here's the plan for next year. Like, no, De'Aaron, here's what we're looking to do moving forward. Here's how we think this can play out. Because I think attempting to speak for an entire fan base isn't the wisest thing to do. But I think one of the major frustrations with this fan base is this team has no direction.
Mm-hmm.
And because it has no direction, it just wallows below mediocrity. They just sit here in this pool of 10 to 13 games under 500. And who knows how much worse that is going to get. But if you can present, obviously, this was our plan last year. Here's what we tried to do. It didn't work. Here's how we think we can move forward. Is it about presenting the plan to De'Aaron that makes it more digestible, or is it just like, nah, dude, I'm just not doing this anymore? And given the conversation we just had about whether this organization is broken, De'Aaron, I don't know that this direction that you can go.
That's where I come from with that. Like, the thought process is sound. I don't know if these guys can come with that thought process and sell De'Aaron Fox on this is what we're going to do.
And you know what? And Brenden, I'm curious how you feel. I would kind of understand that if I'm De'Aaron.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want me to go through this for 2 to 3 more years?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's where I come from with that. Like,
I got you.
I don't think he's not that the plan isn't a good plan. It's just like, I don't want to do this right now. I've already done this for 5 years. Please just move me. I want to see a different part of the NBA.
Yeah. And I think both ways can work just fine. Like, I mean, Chicago's the team I think of when they're talking about trading for somebody and then trying to use this cap space that they're working with. Like, they made that move for Vucevic. Their pick, they still were in, I think, the 11th spot in the East last year. And then they make a couple signings this offseason that are kind of risky and things kind of piece together. So I think that could work. I think that also maybe you can point at De'Aaron and be like, hey, well, look at Tyrese. This is already the best teammate you've ever had, which maybe you don't pitch it like that and point out your incompetence. But, you know, like there are guys that I think can have a decent impact fairly quickly. I think of Cleveland turning it around pretty quickly as well. So I think that there's a chance that De'Aaron could be fine with it because you're already in a spot where I don't know that anybody can look at this and be like, yeah, we're saving this year. You know, like, De'Aaron, what is your goal? You want to be a number 1 or 2 on an eventual Western Conference Finals team? Then we need to get you another guy that you can rub shoulders with when it comes to talent. And I don't know that we can do that in trades. We're trying. If we can, we will. If not, the best way that we can do that is through this draft pick. And one more year of doing that, like, I don't know that it has to be a couple more years of bottoming out. Like, you can easily be in that 10th spot. Like, the competition that they're dealing with right now, fighting for a 10 seed, which I get is a lame goal. But
and
it could
unless
be that
I'm
next year.
One team I always say, unless I'm forgetting something, Memphis didn't bottom out. Did they? When they were kind of they transitioned. You know, they were a certain seed team, and that's kind of where they were slotted. And then it's like, all right, they're falling back a little bit, and now we see what they are. Like, they never like zeroed out and completely bottomed out. They had a crafty front office group that put together, here's our plan, here's what we're going to do, this is our goal to get there. And I feel like they were able to execute it without bottoming out.
Yeah, and I think
I left y'all speechless. That's how fire that was. I left y'all speechless.
it's bottoming out to the point where you're actually getting a top 3 guy that's altering the direction. You know, Morant, Mobley, those type of guys.
And that's the unknown that.
And of course, when you get that top 3 pick, you want to draft the right player.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's the whole thing that I think people kind of just take for granted, right? Like, oh, we get to the top 3, we're going to get a guy that's going to change everything. There's top 3 guys that don't work out. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is a possibility.
Yeah.
You get a top 3 guy to don't work out for a number of different reasons: talent, injuries, whatever the case may be.
You got to get the pick right.
Yeah, you got to get it right.
But you could also make a trade with that pick, and all of a sudden you're really regretting it. The guy you brought in doesn't work well. All of a sudden he's getting beaten down by this crappy direction that the team is going in and lack of heart. And you're looking at what could have been your draft pick go be a superstar somewhere else. Not saying either side's right, but you just got to take a risk somewhere, right? Like, either way is going to be risky. Take a risk. Pick a direction.
Trade your pick for Ray Allen. Convince Kevin Garnett to waive his no-trade clause, and boom! We'll have the most over-talked about championship in history. That's all it's going to take. Brenden, you're killing it. Great work, as always, over at the King's Herald in the King's Pulse podcast. We appreciate you spending so much time with